Usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there is this, like, comforting expectation of precision.
Oh, yeah, completely. It's almost like engineering.
Right. You break your arm, and the X-ray shows that jagged white line in the bone, and the doctor just points to the screen and says, well, there it is. That is the problem.
Exactly. It provides this visual confirmation. It's very binary, like it's broken or it's not broken.
Yeah, but then you step into the world of, neurodevelopment,
Mm.
of childhood emotional neglect, or inherited psychological trauma.
And suddenly that X-ray machine is entirely useless.
Totally useless. You are looking at a diagnostic landscape that is just completely invisible to the naked eye. Like, the damage is definitely there, but you can't, point to a white line on a screen to prove it.
Right, right. You just see the behavioral symptoms.
Exactly. The anger, the withdrawal, the inexplicable physical ailments. Anyway, welcome back to DFC Books.
We are so thrilled to have you here for another deep dive into the stories that shape our understanding of the world.
We really are. And before we step into today's incredibly complex landscape, I want to invite you, our listener, to drop your requests in the comments right now. Like, what book would you like us to explore in our next deep dive?
Yes, please do. We read every single comment, so please let us know what you want to uncover next.
We truly do read them all. And your suggestions constantly push us into, like, these fascinating new territories.
And today's territory is particularly rich because our mission today is to provide a highly detailed book explanation of just an absolute masterpiece.
Oh, it really is.
We're unpacking a specific, beautifully realized French translation of Francis H. Burnett's classic The Secret Garden.
Right. Le Jardin Secret.
Exactly. Translated by Antoine Lemuseau and featuring illustrations by the artistic tandem Rosia Gaudriot. It offers us this really unique lens.
It totally does. So we're going to meticulously analyze the deeply complex, interconnected cast of characters.
Yes, and crucially, we are going to walk through the source material and map out the single most important event from each of the provided chapters.
Because we want to understand the exact mechanism of how neglected whether they are forgotten rose bushes or abandoned children, how they can be coaxed back to vibrant life.
It's such a beautiful process to map out.
Okay, so let's unpack this from the very foundation. Because before we can understand the garden or even look at the rusted lock on the door, we really need to understand the architect who planted the seeds of this narrative.
And the artists who brought it to visual life for this specific edition.
Right. So let's look at Frances Elisa Hodgson Burnett.
Well, the background provided in our sources paints a picture of a life defined by really significant geographic and cultural shifts.
Big shifts.
Frances Burnett was born in Manchester, Great Britain on November 24, 1849, but she didn't remain in that industrial British environment.
Well, she didn't.
At the pivotal age of 16, she and her family relocated to the United States.
I want to pause right there, actually, because 16 is such a critical developmental window.
Oh, absolutely.
To be uprooted from the rigid, deeply entrenched class structures of Victorian England and then just dropped into the United States during the aftermath of the Civil War, I mean, that is a massive cultural whiplash.
It's huge.
She's experiencing profound displacement during the exact years her own identity is forming.
It is a profound displacement, and it fundamentally informs her writing. It was in the United States that she truly capitalized on her literary voice, becoming massively famous for writing children's books.
Right, though today we're exploring The Secret Garden.
Right, but while we were exploring The Secret Garden today, our sources note that her massive stratospheric breakthrough was actually Little Lord Fauntleroy.
And what I find so compelling about that detail from the source is that she used her own son as the physical and behavioral model for the main character of that massive hit.
Yes. She was directly observing the children in her own life and translating them into literature.
Which is fascinating.
She went on to publish a huge volume of novels for both adults and children, eventually passing away in Knoxville, Tennessee on October 24th, 1924. Wow.
So she lived through an era of extreme transition, and she observed childhood not just as a phase, but as a complex psychological state.
And that context of observation leads me right to this incredible detail in our sources about the cover illustrators for this French edition.
Oh, Rosia Gaudriot.
Yes. When I first saw that hyphenated name, I honestly assumed it was one person with a double surname.
It sounds like it.
Right. But the source explicitly notes this is an artistic tandem. It's a man and a woman who live together, work together, and sign their illustrations with, quote, 2 hands.
It is such a striking detail. The source material describes their collaborative work as possessing a profound delicacy of heart and of drawing.
But I kind of want to push back on how we usually think about illustration here. Usually, art is this solitary, ego-driven endeavor, one artist, one vision.
That's the stereotype, yeah.
But the source describes their studio as a place where purity and lightness triumph, where every gesture, every stroke, every object counts.
To have 2 people literally drawing on the same page, signing with 2 hands, that requires a complete surrender of the individual ego. You have to trust the other person to complete your line.
Wow. That's true.
And honestly, that feels like the ultimate foundational analogy for what this entire book is actually about. Think about the act of gardening. You can't force a seed to grow through sheer willpower. It is a deliberate, delicate collaboration between the human hand and the earth.
That is a brilliant synthesis. You are absolutely right. The artistic synergy of the illustrators perfectly mirrors the biological and psychological synergy required to heal the characters in the text.
Exactly.
Just as a garden cannot exist without a complex, highly functional ecosystem, the soil interacting with the rain, the worms aerating the dirt for the roots, this story relies on a deeply interconnected ecosystem of human beings.
Because none of these characters possess the capacity to heal in isolation.
None of them.
So let's dissect that human ecosystem. Let's look at the actual cast of characters as they are presented in the text. Because I think people have this hazy, nostalgic memory of, like, sweet, passive Victorian children.
Oh, they definitely do.
And that is completely wrong. Let's start with Mary Lennox.
Okay, so the text introduces Mary in a way that aggressively shatters the trope of the angelic child.
Totally shatters it.
She is initially described as the ugliest, most disagreeable child imaginable.
Which is so harsh.
It is. The French text utilizes a very specific, potent phrase for her. It calls her a tyran domestique, a domestic tyrant.
A 10-year-old domestic tyrant. It's almost an oxymoron, but it perfectly captures her behavior.
Yeah.
And the physical descriptions are just as harsh. She is sickly, possessing a yellow complexion and thin blonde hair that hangs limply.
Right.
The text attributes this physical frailty to the oppressive hot climate of India, but, it is very clearly a psychosomatic manifestation of her environment.
Exactly. The physical sickness is merely a shadow of the emotional reality. She is a child who is entirely profoundly unwanted.
By everyone.
Her mother, referred to in the text as the Mem Sahib, is described as a beautiful socialite whose entire existence revolves around parties and appearances.
Yeah, the mother actively avoids looking at her own daughter.
And her father is perpetually absent, consumed by his work.
So the parents effectively abdicate all responsibility, just handing her off to the native staff.
Yes. She is raised primarily by an ayah named Sadie, along with a host of other native servants.
Okay.
And here is where the tyranny is cultivated. Because the servants are absolutely terrified that Mary's crying will irritate the beautiful Mem Sahib, their strategy is simply to give in to Mary's every single tantrum.
They offer zero boundaries.
Zero discipline and zero genuine affection.
This is exactly what I meant with the broken X-ray machine analogy earlier. If you just look at the surface behavior, you see a monstrous, irredeemable child.
Yep.
But what is the actual underlying psychological mechanism here? Like, why is she a tyrant?
Well, the mechanism is emotional starvation operating under the guise of material indulgence. Mary's bitterness and her violent tantrums are not born from innate malice.
No.
She is not genetically predisposed to cruelty. Her behavior is a severe, highly adapted survival response to absolute emotional neglect.
Wow, yeah.
When a child learns that no one actually cares for their internal well-being, they build a defensive fortress. She lashes out because tyranny is the only form of control she has ever been taught.
I hear that, and I agree with the psychology of it, but I kind of have to challenge this slightly.
Okay, go ahead.
At what point does trauma stop being a shield and start being a weapon? Because as we see in the text, she is actively physically abusive to the servants who are just trying to survive the colonial hierarchy.
Right.
Like, she is incredibly cruel.
That is a very fair challenge. The text doesn't excuse her cruelty, it exposes the root of it.
Right.
The trauma has become weaponized because the environment incentivizes it. The servants submit to the abuse, which reinforces to Mary that abuse is the correct method of interaction.
Because she has literally no other behavioral blueprint.
None. And we see an exact parallel to this when she meets her cousin, Colin Craven, the young master of Misselthwaite Manor.
Right. If Mary is the tyran domestique, Cullen is the young Raja, as Mary accurately dubs him.
He is another terror of a child, but his tyranny manifests entirely differently.
How so?
Well, Colin is a bedridden hypochondriac. He is utterly, uncompromisingly convinced that he is going to suffer an early death.
And he has that highly specific, paralyzing obsession that he's going to grow a hump on his back, just like his father.
Yes.
It's a completely hysterical paralysis.
Yeah.
He's the heir to the manor, so he possesses ultimate authority over the staff, much like Mary did in India.
Very similar dynamic.
The servants are terrified to upset him because it triggers these violent, exhausting, hysterical tantrums.
Right, but beneath the power, he is identical to Mary. Spoiled beyond belief, yet entirely unloved.
His own father cannot bear to even look at him.
Exactly. He is suffocating in this massive Gothic manner, drowning in fears that no adult has ever bothered to rationally challenge.
Both Mary and Colin are just trapped in toxic feedback loops. They are locked in environments that actively feed their neuroses.
And to break a cycle that entrenched, you cannot use a gentle intervention. You need a massive disruption.
You need an entirely new element introduced to the ecosystem.
And that element is Dickon Sowerby.
Ah, Dickon. Our sources paint him as the literal human embodiment of spring.
He really is. He is the absolute antithesis of everything Mary and Colin represent. Dickon is a local boy from the moor, the brother of the manor's maid, Martha.
Right.
The text describes him as a profound force of nature. Martha famously claims that Dickon could make a flower grow out of a pile of dry rocks.
I love that line.
He possesses an almost mystical, deeply intuitive connection to the earth and to wildlife.
It really borders on the magical. I mean, the source material lists the actual menagerie of rescued animals he travels with.
Oh, the animals are great.
He has a crow named Suey Sooty in English. He has 2 squirrels named Noisette and Coquille, which translate to nut and shell.
And most incredibly, he has a tamed fox.
Yes, Captain. Think about the symbolism there. A fox is a wild, untamable predator, yet Dickon's absolute grounded gentleness has neutralized the fox's aggression.
It is a perfect metaphor for what Dickon will eventually do for Mary and Colin. He doesn't command the animals, he communes with them.
He communes with them. I like that.
He represents the unneurotic, healthy, outward-facing life force that has been entirely absent from the manor. He nurtures the vulnerable rather than exploiting them.
And bridging the gap between Dickens' wild moor and the stifling manor are 2 fascinating adult characters. Well, if we can call one of them adult. Ben Weatherstaff and the Robin.
Ben Weatherstaff is the estate's gruff, solitary gardener. On the surface, he is incredibly misanthropic. He is as prickly as the rose bushes he tends.
He really is.
But the text reveals that beneath this abrasive exterior, he harbors a deeply guarded, secret loyalty to the memory of Colin's late mother. He is the quiet keeper of the garden's memory.
And the Robin.
Yes, the Robin.
The text does not treat the Robin as background scenery. The Robin is elevated to the status of a fully sentient character.
Absolutely.
He is cheeky, he is brave, and incredibly, he becomes Mary's very first genuine friend in the world.
Her first experience of reciprocal affection isn't with a human, it's with a bird.
Right. Ben Weatherstaff explicitly notes that the robin is the only living creature that still truly knows the secret garden. The bird acts as this magical, instinctual guide.
The animal kingdom in this narrative consistently demonstrates a higher emotional intelligence than the adult humans.
They really do.
The animals recognize the children's psychological starvation. But there is one human adult who shares this intuitive wisdom.
Susan Sowerby, Dickens' mother.
Yes, she is the ultimate Earth Mother archetype.
Precisely. She provides a stark contrast to Mary's Mem Sahib mother.
She does. The Sowerbys exist in deep poverty. I mean, Susan has 12 children crammed into a tiny cottage on the moor.
12 children.
Yet her immense wisdom, her practicality, and her profound maternal warmth become the emotional anchor not just for her own children, but eventually for both Mary and Colin.
She understands instantly what the wealthy adults around them are completely blind to.
Which brings us to the architect of this entire disaster. Archibald Craven, Colin's father.
Mr. Craven. He is a man who has been entirely shattered by sudden grief.
His wife died following a traumatic accident in her beloved walled garden. And the text shows us that his response to this unbearable pain was absolute avoidance.
Extreme avoidance.
He didn't just lock the door to the garden. He locked it, he took the key, and he buried it deep in the earth.
He buried the key in the dirt. And by doing that, he essentially locked his own son away, too.
He did.
He spends his entire life fleeing his own home, traveling constantly because he cannot bear to look at Colin. He claims Colin's eyes remind him too much of his dead wife.
He implements a regime of institutionalized silence. He mandates that no one on the estate is permitted to speak of the garden, and by extension, no one is permitted to speak of the mother.
I want to stop right here, because looking at Mr. Craven really shifts the perspective on everything we just discussed.
How so?
We labeled Mary and Colin as tyrants and terrors. We talked about their tantrums. But looking at the source material, I have to ask, aren't the adults in this story actually far more emotionally crippled than the children?
Oh, that's a really interesting point.
I mean, Mary and Colin are screaming because they are in pain, they're loud.
Yeah.
But Mr. Craven's neurosis is silent, wealthy, and institutionalized.
Yes.
He uses his massive financial power and authority to mandate that an entire ecosystem dies, just so he doesn't have to process his grief. He literally abandons a disabled child to the care of terrified servants. The adults are the ones who built the machinery of this dysfunction.
That is a phenomenal observation, and it cuts to the absolute core of the novel's psychology.
Right.
The children's trauma is reactive and noisy. The adult's trauma is proactive, structural, and infinitely more destructive.
Absolutely.
Mr. Craven's coping mechanism is repression on an architectural scale. And as any psychologist will tell you, whatever emotion you violently repress does not simply disappear.
No, it rots underground. It poisons the soil of everything above it.
It rots underground until someone is brave enough to dig it up, and that is the perfect transition.
Let's do it.
Now that we have thoroughly unpacked the psychological architecture of these characters, we need to trace the exact sequence of how this repression is dismantled.
We are going to walk through the pivotal events of the narrative, focusing meticulously on the single most important event from each of the specific chapters outlined in our source material.
Let us begin at the absolute beginning of Mary's psychological fracture.
Okay.
When we look at Chapter 1, which in the French translation is titled Il n'y a plus personne ici, meaning there is no one left here, the defining action that sets the entire narrative in motion is the sudden cholera outbreak and Mary's resulting absolute isolation.
The atmosphere established here is incredibly oppressive.
It really is.
Mary wakes up one morning in India, and the heat is described as heavy and suffocating. But the real disturbance is a break in routine. Her ayah, Sadie, is nowhere to be found. Instead, a stranger is there.
And Mary, fully inhabiting her role as the domestic tyrant,
Yeah.
is absolutely furious.
She is just seething. She isolates herself under a tree, making mud pies with red hibiscus flowers. And the text notes she is angrily muttering insults in French.
What does she say?
She keeps saying, cochon, fille de cochon, literally calling her servant a pig, which our source highlights as the most degrading insult one could throw at a native servant.
Wow.
She's a child completely wrapped in her own privileged, ignorant rage.
But that fragile bubble of privilege is violently punctured. While hiding, she overhears a panicked, whispered conversation.
Right.
A young blonde officer is telling her mother that a deadly cholera epidemic has swept into the area. The tragedy is that they should have fled to the hills weeks prior, but the mother's vanity kept them there for a dinner party.
For a dinner party. That's just awful.
And within hours, the wailing begins in the servants' quarters. The ayah, Sadie, is already dead.
The speed of the collapse is terrifying. The adults fall into total panic, and Mary is entirely forgotten in the chaos.
Completely forgotten.
She hides in the nursery. Later, she wanders into the deserted dining room. The adults have literally slid the table mid-meal. She finds a full glass of sweet wine left behind, drinks the entire thing, and falls into a deep, heavy sleep.
That sleep acts almost as a descent into the underworld, because when she wakes up, the most profound sensory shift in the novel occurs.
This is the crucial psychological pivot.
She goes to sleep surrounded by chaotic, oppressive heat, frantic footsteps, and the horrific wailing of people dying of cholera. She wakes up to an absolute chilling void.
The source material notes she wakes to find a small snake slithering away into the door, and then she slowly realizes the terrifying truth. Everyone is dead, or they have run away. She is completely alone in a house of the dead.
The sudden deprivation of all sensory input, from chaos to absolute silence, cements her trauma. It is the ultimate abandonment.
Yeah.
She learns that the world can end in a single afternoon and no one will come looking for you. This absolute isolation hardens her defensive shell into iron before she is ever shipped across the ocean to Yorkshire.
So she arrives in Misselthwaite Manor in Yorkshire, already deeply traumatized, entirely suspicious of the world.
Yes.
But by the time we hit Chapter 7, titled La Clef du Jardin, or The Key to the Garden, the narrative momentum shifts from passive observation to active discovery.
It does.
The single most important event here isn't a conversation. It is a physical act. Mary unearths the buried key.
Yes, she has been gathering fragments of information from Martha, the maid. She learns the mythology of the manor, that Mr. Craven locked a specific garden 10 years ago after his wife died and buried the key.
And for a child who's been denied all access to emotional interiority, a literal locked garden becomes an irresistible obsession.
It really does.
She begins spending all her time outside, and she forms that crucial bond with the robin.
And remember, Ben Weatherstaff told her the robin is the only one who knows the garden. And the bird is literally hopping along the wall, scratching at the turned earth. He draws Mary's attention to a specific spot in the dirt.
It is a moment of deep symbolic resonance. The natural world, represented by the bird, is guiding the human toward the buried mechanism of healing.
Exactly.
Mary digs into the turned soil, and her fingers close around an old, heavy piece of metal.
It's the key.
Yes.
Yes.
And the metaphor here is so visceral. Finding that key is exactly like a patient unearthing a deeply repressed memory in therapy.
That's a great comparison.
The key has been buried in the dirt for a decade. It is rusted, it is filthy, and it was deliberately pushed down into the dark because it was associated with an unbearable amount of pain.
Right.
But here's the critical thing. Even though it is rusted and dirty, it still possesses the exact same mechanical power it always did.
It still holds the power to open the lock.
You just have to be brave enough to dig your hands into the dirt and pull it out.
That is a highly accurate psychological framing. Possessing the tool for healing is the first step. But having the key in your pocket does not mean you are psychologically prepared to turn the lock.
No, it doesn't.
The actual crossing of the threshold requires a massive leap of faith.
Absolutely. And before we watch Mary take that terrifying leap of faith, I want to take a very quick moment to speak directly to you, our listener.
Oh, yes.
If you are captivated by how we are peeling back the psychological layers of this classic story, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast right now. Subscribing ensures you never miss a deep dive, and it is the single best way to help us continue exploring these incredible literary worlds for you.
It truly makes a massive difference for the show. Thank you. Now let us move to Chapter 9, titled Une maison bien étrange, a very strange house. We have the key. Now, what is the core defining action of this chapter?
Well, the single most important event in this chapter is the culmination of the suspense. Mary actually crosses the threshold into the secret garden.
The mechanics of how she enters are incredibly deliberate. A gust of wind again, the natural world intervening, blows back a thick curtain of ivy on the brick wall, revealing the hidden door handle and the keyhole.
She pulls the rusted key from her pocket.
And the lock has not been engaged in 10 years. The source text emphasizes a critical physical detail. Mary has to use both hands, channeling every ounce of her meager, malnourished strength to force that heavy, rusted key to turn in the lock.
That physical exertion perfectly mirrors the immense emotional effort required to shatter a decade of mandated repression. She forces the lock, she pushes the heavy door open, and she slips inside.
And what she discovers inside is not an instant magical paradise.
Not at all.
The text describes a mysterious, almost haunting world. It is completely overrun by climbing roses that have been left unchecked for 10 years.
It's wild.
They have grown so wild and thick that they form these frail, intricate, leafless bridges between the branches of the trees. It looks like a gray, spellbound, dormant world.
It's like stepping into a grayscale photograph. And Mary's immediate overwhelming concern, which demonstrates a massive leap in her capacity for empathy, is whether the garden is completely dead.
She's so worried about it.
She is looking at these dry, gray branches, and she desperately needs to know if there is life inside them. She is entirely projecting her own internal state onto the physical landscape of the garden. She feels dead inside, but she is desperately hoping that beneath the surface, life is still possible.
That projection drives her next action, which is highly significant. She returns to the house, sits by the fire with Martha, and asks a very specific question.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
She asks if she can acquire a small spade, a little shovel, to dig the earth.
But she doesn't tell Martha why. She deliberately hides her true intent. She plays the part of an innocent child just wanting to play in the dirt.
Exactly. She is actively protecting her sanctuary through deception. She understands the power dynamics of the manor.
She knows that if Mr. Craven or the housekeeper discovers the door is open, their wrath will be absolute and a new lock will be installed.
Yes. By hiding her intent, she is establishing a psychological boundary. For the very first time in her 10 years of life, She has found something precious, and she is taking active ownership of its protection.
That newfound ownership is precisely what makes Chapter 10, simply titled Dickon, so incredibly fraught with risk. Up until now, the secret has been entirely hers.
But that has to change.
The single most important event in this chapter is that Mary makes the agonizing choice to share her secret with Dickon.
It is a decision forced by necessity. The text notes that Mary is growing stronger physically. The fresh air of the moor is bringing color to her yellow cheeks. She is skipping rope up to 100 times in a row.
She's doing so well.
She is inside the garden every day, using her small spade to clear away the dead weeds, but she hits a wall of ignorance.
Right, she doesn't know what she's doing.
She doesn't possess the knowledge to distinguish between what is dead wood and what is merely sleeping life. She needs an expert. She needs the boy who understands the earth.
So Dickon arrives, surrounded by his menagerie of animals, and the moment Mary realizes she has to show him the garden, she experiences a wave of sheer, terrifying panic.
She has let an outsider in.
Yes. Overwhelmed by this sudden, fierce possessiveness, she cries out to him, almost aggressively, that she has stolen a garden. She yells at him, they left it to die, and they have no right to take it back. It's a raw outburst of pure indignation.
It is a stunning psychological defense. By defending the garden's right to exist after being abandoned, she is aggressively defending her own right to exist and be loved after being abandoned.
That's a great way to look at it.
And Dickens' reaction is a masterclass in emotional validation. He does not laugh at her intensity. He does not dismiss her fears. He immediately swears absolute secrecy.
He equates keeping the garden hidden to keeping the location of a vulnerable bird's nest safe from cruel boys who would smash the eggs.
He speaks her language, he validates the stakes, and then they go inside together. Dickon takes out his pocket knife, gently chips at the bark of a gray, seemingly dead rose branch, and shows Mary the pale green ring of life hidden underneath.
Oh, wow.
He points to the ground and explains that the bulbs, the snowdrops, the crocuses, the daffodils are all very much alive, deep underground. They are just waiting for the right conditions to push through the soil.
It is the ultimate moment of reassurance. He proves to her empirically that the damage of neglect is not permanent.
Yes, exactly.
So Mary has secured her sanctuary, and she has recruited her co-conspirator. The ecosystem is forming, but there is a massive threat lingering inside the manor walls. In the unnumbered middle excerpts provided in our source material, we get the formal introduction of Colin.
Right.
Mary finally follows the sound of the crying she's been hearing echoing down the corridors at night and discovers her cousin. The single most important event in these middle excerpts is the psychological warfare Mary employs to manipulate Colin into keeping the garden a secret.
Colin represents an incredibly volatile variable. When he learns that Mary has been outside, he demands to know everything she knows about the locked garden.
And because his entire identity is built on being the tyrannical invalid heir, his immediate reaction is to exert his power.
He threatens that if the adults won't give him the key, he will use his absolute authority as the future master of Misselthwaite to order the servants to violently break the door down.
It is the classic destructive tantrum of a child who feels entirely out of control. If he orders the door broken, the adults immediately take over. The sanctuary is violated, the magic is destroyed, Mr. Craven is notified, and the healing environment is completely obliterated.
Going to ruin everything.
Mary, who is usually incredibly blunt and confrontational, realizes she cannot fight him with anger. She has to use high-level diplomacy. She brilliantly de-escalates his tantrum.
How she achieves this is fascinating. She doesn't tell him no. She redirects his desire for control.
How so?
She explains that if he forces the door open with servants, it will instantly become just another regular, boring place managed by the adults he despises.
Oh, that's smart.
But, she whispers, if they keep it entirely hidden, if they slowly search for the door themselves, they can slip inside like thrushes in a nest.
She adopts Dickens' metaphor. She paints this incredibly romantic picture of watching the plants wake up in total secrecy.
And Colin, who has spent his entire life trapped in a bed reading books about the outside world, has never possessed a genuine secret. He has never been part of an alliance.
He is completely captivated by the romance and the exclusivity of the idea. He immediately agrees to cooperate.
Mary successfully neutralizes the threat by giving him a reason to anticipate the future. She gives a boy who is waiting to die a reason to want to wake up tomorrow.
Which brings us to the immense logistical hurdle of Chapter 18. Il n'y a pas un instant à perdre, meaning not a moment to lose.
The context for this chapter is a particularly severe hysterical tantrum from Colin.
Oh, right.
His fears regarding the lump on his back spiral out of control, and Mary actually has to scream at him to snap him out of his hysterical loop. They realize that theoretical conversations are no longer sufficient. They must get him out of the house.
Thus, the most important event in Chapter 18 is the meticulous formulation of the escape plan.
It reads like the planning sequence of a heist movie.
It really does.
Yeah.
Mary runs out to the moor to fetch Dickon. They convene in Colin's opulent bedroom. Dickon brings his animals inside. The fox, the crow, the squirrels are just roaming around this stifling, sterile room.
That's such a funny image.
The three children sit on the thick rug, poring over massive, expensive botanical illustration books. They are cross-referencing the flowers they have seen outside, identifying complex species like the aqualegia or columbine.
And amidst this, they plot a highly strategic, almost military operation to wheel Colin outside without being detected.
The source text explicitly compares the children to generals huddled in a tent on the eve of a decisive battle.
They have to map out a highly specific route through the massive estate grounds. They have to calculate the movements of M. Roach, the head gardener, and the other outdoor staff.
They engineer a plan to wheel Colin past the regular, boring flower beds first, to establish an alibi for the servants watching from the windows before vanishing down the paths toward the ivy-covered wall.
This planning phase is crucial because it demonstrates a massive shift in their psychological agency.
They are no longer passive victims simply reacting to their circumstances. They are actively, intelligently orchestrating the conditions of their own healing.
And all that meticulous planning culminates in the explosive climax of Chapter 20, titled Je vais vivre pendant des siècles. I am going to live for centuries.
This chapter contains arguably the most iconic, dramatic scene in the entire narrative.
Without question, the single most important event here is Colin physically standing up from his wheelchair to defend the garden.
Let's set the stage for this moment because the sensory details are incredible.
Oh, they're beautiful.
The heist is successful. Dickon wheels Colin through the hidden door and into the secret garden. It is the height of spring. They wheel the chair directly under a massive, blossoming white plum tree.
The air is thick with falling white petals. The canopy above them is buzzing with the sound of bees.
Colin is sitting there, utterly absorbing this overwhelming influx of life. But then the adult world violently intrudes on the sanctuary.
Ben Weatherstaff.
Yes. Ben Weatherstaff, the gruff gardener, has noticed unexplained footprints outside the wall. He sets up a heavy wooden ladder, climbs up, and peers over the top of the brick wall.
And Ben is absolutely horrified by what he sees. He looks down into his late mistress's sacred, locked garden, and he sees Colin the boy. The entire staff believes to be a dying, crippled, fragile invalid sitting casually in a wheelchair.
Ben completely loses his temper. He doesn't hold back out of respect for the young master. He hurls vicious insults down at Colin.
What does she say?
He calls him half-witted. He calls him a cripple. He explicitly accuses him of having crooked legs and a crooked, humped back.
He hits the absolute core of Colin's deepest, most paralyzing neurosis.
Yes. And this is where I want to heavily analyze the text, because Colin's reaction is extraordinary. Colin is still the young Raja. His arrogance and his pride are astronomical.
Right.
When a servant screams these insults at him, Colin doesn't shrink away in fear. Driven by pure, unadulterated, volcanic outrage at being disrespected, Colin violently throws the blanket off his legs.
He forces himself out of the wheelchair, and through sheer force of will, he stands straight up on his own 2 feet.
It is framed as a miraculous moment, but it is deeply grounded in psychosomatic reality. He stands up not because he is sprinkled with fairy dust, but because he is fueled by absolute fury.
Ben Weatherstaff, seeing the boy standing tall and perfectly straight with no hump on his back, begins to openly weep in shock.
And Colin, standing there shaking with exertion but entirely upright, imperiously points his finger at Ben and orders him to come down off the ladder and join their secret alliance.
This is such a subversive, brilliant piece of writing by Burnett, because the text is telling us that it isn't always gentle medicine or soft coddling or even the beautiful scent of the plum blossoms that initiates the physical healing.
In this specific pivotal moment, the medicine is absolute, white-hot anger and spite.
Exactly.
Sometimes defiance is the strongest physical therapy. He stands up to prove Ben wrong. He stands up out of spite.
It is a profound insight. His hysterical paralysis was a physical manifestation of possessing no control, no purpose, and no genuine challenges in his life.
Right.
The exact moment his pride is attacked, the moment he has something precious to defend, his physical body instantly responds to the overriding command of his will. The mind-body connection snaps into alignment. He needs to assert his dominance, and he literally physically rises to the occasion.
And once that physical barrier is broken, the trajectory of the narrative changes completely. The secret is out, but it begins to leak in a highly constructive way. Which brings us to chapter 24, Laissons-les s'amuser, which translates to let them have fun.
The defining event in this chapter is the conscious decision by the observing adults to surrender to the magic, rather than attempting to medically intervene or control it.
The children's ecosystem is expanding. Out on the moor, we see Dickens' incredible agricultural prowess in his own small, stone-walled garden, proving his connection to the earth is genuine.
And his mother, Susan Sowerby, is brought into the fold.
She learns the secret of the manor from Dickens, and she acts as the perfect silent confidant, sending them fresh milk and roasted potatoes to eat in the garden.
Meanwhile, back inside the gloomy halls of the manor, Dr. Craven, who is Colin's physician, his cousin, and coincidentally the next in line to inherit the estate if Colin dies, is observing a baffling phenomenon alongside the stern housekeeper, Mrs. Medlock.
They're watching the children transform before their eyes. They notice that Mary is entirely unrecognizable from the sallow, ugly, frowning child who arrived from India.
She is gaining weight, her posture has changed, her thin hair is shining.
And even more inexplicably, Colin is eating massive amounts of food, he's gaining flesh, and the dark manor halls are suddenly echoing with the sound of his genuine laughter.
As a medical professional of the Victorian era, Dr. Craven is faced with a profound dilemma. Does he exert his authority? Does he demand to know exactly what the children are doing out on the grounds all day?
Does he prescribe more bed rest and tonics?
No. He looks at the undeniable, vibrant results standing in front of him. He throws his hands up in defeat, and he utters the phrase that titles the chapter, "Let them have fun."
It is a rare moment of adult humility in the text. The rigid medical establishment embodied by Dr. Craven chooses to step back.
He acknowledges that nature, fresh air, and pure joy are executing a healing process that his pills, his confinement, and his diagnoses utterly failed to achieve.
He lets go of the need for the X-ray machine. He accepts the invisible healing. And that acceptance paves the way for the spiritual, emotional climax of the book in chapter 25, Le Rideau, the curtain.
The single most important event in this chapter is a moment of pure transcendence. The singing of the doxology and the arrival of Susan Sowerby to bestow her maternal blessing.
The visual imagery described in this chapter is just staggering. The gray, dormant world Mary first entered is gone.
It's completely transformed.
The garden is now a dense, riotous explosion of color-towering blue delphiniums, nodding columbines, purple campanulas. The robin is fiercely guarding a nest full of eggs. The life cycle has completely renewed itself.
And Dickens, standing in the center of this resurrected paradise, is so overcome by the sheer beauty and vitality of the earth that he simply opens his mouth and begins to sing the doxology.
In the French text, it reads, Gloire à Dieu dans les cieux. Glory to God in the highest.
It is not presented as a rigid, institutional religious act. It is a spontaneous expression of pure reverence for the miracle of life.
And the reaction of the others is deeply moving. Colin, the former young Raja, and Ben Weatherstaff, the gruff cynic, both silently and respectfully remove their hats. They all join their voices together. In that moment, the overgrown garden is transformed into a sacred cathedral.
And just as the song ends, the ultimate validation occurs. The heavy door opens, and Susan Sowerby steps through the curtain of ivy.
She is wearing a simple blue coat, illuminated by the dappled sunlight, and the text frames her almost like a maternal figure stepping out of a classical painting.
She doesn't scold them. She gathers the children into her arms.
She looks at Colin, who is standing tall, broad-chested, and glowing with health, and she tells him the one thing he has desperately needed to hear his entire life, that he looks exactly like his beautiful mother.
She steps in to provide the unconditional maternal love that both Mary and Colin have been starved of.
But she also recognizes that the ecosystem is still missing a crucial piece. She issues a gentle but firm decree: Mr. Craven must be brought back.
Her intuition is flawless. She recognizes that while the physical and emotional healing of the children is complete, the structural healing of the family unit is not.
Right.
The father must return from his self-imposed exile to witness the resurrection of the garden he tried to kill and the son he tried to forget.
And that profound necessity leads us directly to our final provided chapter from the source material, chapter 27, Dans le Jardin, in the garden.
This is the resolution of the entire narrative arc. The single most important event is the reunion of the broken father and the healed son.
Mr. Craven has been aimlessly wandering through Europe, still desperately fleeing his memories.
But he experiences a sudden, inexplicable, almost psychic compulsion to return to Misselthwaite Manor.
When he arrives, he feels drawn toward the walled garden, the exact geographical location he has avoided like poison for 10 years. As he approaches the high brick wall, expecting the crushing silence of the past, he hears something impossible.
He hears the joyous, raucous, entirely uninhibited laughter of children chasing each other.
And as he reaches for the door handle, the door violently bursts open from the inside.
And out bursts a boy, not a pale, hunched invalid in a wheelchair.
A tall, incredibly handsome, completely whole, athletic boy, running at full speed directly into his shocked father's arms. It's Colin.
And Colin looks up at his father and cries out the exact phrase he proclaimed earlier, "I am going to live for centuries."
Mr. Craven is weeping. They walk back through the door together into the secret garden, which is now blazing with the rich purple, gold, and red hues of late autumn.
And they sit together under the canopy of the plum tree as Colin recounts every detail of the magical secret history of their healing.
It is the ultimate, total restoration. Every fractured element of the story is made whole.
The rusted locked door has been thrown open, the buried key has been reclaimed from the dirt, the dormant garden is boosting with life, and the shattered family is finally reunited.
It is just a structurally flawless narrative arc. Which brings us to the final and perhaps the most important question of this entire deep dive.
Let's move into section 4, the thematic masterpiece.
Having detailed all these interconnected events, having traced the psychology from trauma to triumph, we have to ask the ultimate question. How does the text explain why this magic actually worked? What is the underlying mechanism of this healing?
If we synthesize all the details, the dialogue, and the metaphors from the text, it all distills down to one incredibly beautiful recurring motif.
The bulbs.
The bulbs working silently underground in the dark. Early in the story, when Mary is terrified the garden is dead, Dickon explains to her that the bulbs underneath the soil are not dead, they are merely waiting.
Right.
He articulates the core philosophy of the book. Plants simply want to live. It is their biological imperative. But they need love to achieve it.
They need someone to gently clear away the dead wood, the choking weeds, and the debris so they can finally push through the dirt and reach the sun. The garden acts as a perfect, flawless mirror for the psychology of Mary and Colin.
Because the children were also buried in the dark, suffocating under the debris of adult neglect.
Exactly. But the text proposes something incredibly profound. The secrecy itself was the primary medicine.
Yes, the secrecy was essential.
Because the garden was locked away, because it was hidden behind high brick walls and completely inaccessible to the adult world, Mary and Colin were able to heal without the suffocating pity, the constant judgmental staring, or the invasive medical interference of society.
Think about it. The entire adult establishment believed Colin was dying. If they had been watching him attempt to stand, their terrified expectations, their gasps of fear, would have kept him sick.
In the complete privacy of the secret garden, they were entirely free to experiment, to fail, to throw ugly tantrums, to dig in the dirt, and eventually to stand up entirely on their own terms.
Oh, that is so incredibly powerful.
And when you think about it, how deeply relatable is that concept for you, the listener, right now? In our modern, hyper-connected lives, we are constantly observed.
Oh, completely.
We are constantly expected to share our progress, document our failures, and broadcast our lives for public consumption. We live under the constant surveillance of social media and societal expectations.
It's exhausting.
But sometimes when you are trying to heal from a profound trauma, or even if you're just trying to learn a complex new skill or pivot your life path, you desperately need a secret garden.
You need a private, fiercely guarded space, totally free from external judgment.
Free from the expectations of your family, your boss, or the algorithm, where you can just focus on quietly putting your roots down into the soil. You need the safety of the dark to germinate before you are strong enough to bloom in the sun.
It is a profound psychological truth wrapped inside the framework of a children's story. We all require a sanctuary where we are permitted to grow at our own awkward, messy pace without an audience taking notes.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that is the perfect resonant thought to end our exploration on today. Thank you so much for tuning in to DFC Books.
Yes, thank you.
We absolutely love unpacking the complex psychology and the hidden depths of these incredible stories for you, and we hope this deep dive helps you look at this beloved classic with completely fresh eyes.
And as we sign off, we want to leave you with one final provocative question to ponder in your own
Oh, I
time.
like this. Let's hear it.
We have just spent the last hour analyzing exactly what happened when a rusted, forgotten key opened a locked door for Mary and Colin. We watched them step away from the murky diagnostic waters of their trauma and plant their hands in the vibrant soil.
Yeah.
Take a moment to look at your own life. What is your secret garden? What neglected passion, what fractured relationship, or what deeply buried part of your own identity is waiting just behind an ivy-covered wall, hoping you will finally be brave enough to dig through the dirt and turn the key.
Until next time, keep reading and keep digging.